this machine, I guess the best way to describe it is a hybrid horizontal machine. You get 60% of the residue mixed into the soil profile, returning that NP and K or those nutrients back into the soil to start breaking down, or use that biology in the soil to start breaking it down and recycling it. The lighter 40% is going to come to the top as a mulch layer, and it's also going to be held firmly in contact, so it's not going to blow away or float away in the next weather event. But the biggest thing is, it's everybody at the National Farm Machinery Show, or several of them coming up, well, it's just another VT machine. It's different than a VT machine. It's got a lot of the theory that everybody likes on the VT, where you're not causing compaction or smearing layers, but it does a little bit more. It's a little more aggressive than a VT machine. You actually get some incorporation, some leveling action, so if you need to take care of some combine ruts or some sprayer tracks, things of that nature, you've got that ability to take care of that. So stepping through the steps of this, I coined it the trifecta, but it's just 3 different steps that it works through. So it's the front row of discs is basically this spot that starts off. It takes most of the abuse. It starts that cutting and sizing of the residue. It loosens that soil profile. So what this actually does is it fractures, lifts, and then passes the soil to the second row. If you can see the arrows on the screen, it takes the soil profile and moves it in that direction. And whatever depth you're working at, you're moving that whole soil profile 2 different directions, so you do get a little more incorporation and a little more leveling. Each one of those discs are on an independent set of arms. They use a rubber element that actually acts as 4 different mechanisms. It's a spring type element, it's a bearing element. It also functions as dampening and tensioning, so it has independent ability as you're driving through the field. The second row of discs is a cross cut. It continues that sizing and residue, and also finishes that inversion of the soil. So you're lifting it, you're cutting it, you're turning it over, and you're putting that residue back within the soil. So at this point, you're moving it back to the full left of the profile, and at this point it is very semi-level. It's not quite finished yet because we still have one more step, which would be that rubber roller. So you're texturing the soil at this point, you're consolidating and smoothing the finish, so you're completing that leveling process. The other nice thing is you're firming that residue on top. If you can see the pictures off to the right, you really can't tell, but there are some peaks and valleys in there if you look at the roller, how it's made, which is actually a benefit for moisture and air. So in the valleys of that, you've got a place for the water to infiltrate. On the peak of it, you have a place for the air to exchange, so you're not sealing off the soil or causing it to be hypoxic or souring the soil, as a lot of the old timers say. So you've got that residue that's firmly in contact with the soil or a fine earth. You're also, with that texture, you're getting a little bit of wind and erosion control from wind or rain. So you're breaking up the surface, and you're also having some ridges to slow that water down. Also, you can speed up the germination in the spring by warming the soil, or also continuing that biological life later on in the fall. Talk a little bit more about the geometry. Disc blades are independently spaced 10 inches apart. Both the front and the back row have that 10-inch spacing, but they are offset to 5 inches. Both front and back arms have a compound angle to them. The front is 14 degrees with 4 tilt. The back is 17 degrees with 6 tilt. So you can see in the picture there, that's kind of the overall profile of where the blades are touching the ground. But with the speed and geometry is where this machine separates itself, where you're not a conventional horizontal machine where you're dragging something through the soil and making that smear layer. You're actually using the blade speed or the radial velocity of that blade to be able to fracture the soil. So you're taking that kinetic energy and transferring it into the soil where it's actually finishing that layer without causing that smearing. So speed and this geometry is very important. So talking about compaction a little bit, some of the first questions we get asked, they look at this machine and say, man, this thing's huge. So I went out to tractor data just to put it a little bit into perspective. Say you have a 331 Mach Till that you're going to be pulling. Well, you're going to need roughly a 500 horsepower tractor to do this. Once again, I went out to tractor data, found a machine, in this case it was a John Deere, that fit that bill. With its work clothes on, it weighs 54,000 pounds. The tracks on this machine are quite large. But you still got over almost 12,000 square inches of track contact. So that tractor breaks down to roughly 5 psi of static load. and you're sitting around that 6 3/4 ton of weight per contact point. University studies recommend under the 6, no more than 12. So this seems to fit the bill. The tractor's okay, but what about the Mach Till? So let's just start off with the 331 without the blades in the ground. The curb weight of this machine is 29,000, and if you break those contact points, if you look at the picture off to the right between the front 2 wing tires and the 2 center frame tires, as well as that rear rubber rolling section, you've got about 4,000 square inches of surface area, so that's going to give you a net of less than 3 ton per contact point, or 7.25 psi spread across that machine. Now we drop it in the ground, we start taking off through the field. You know, it's going to lower to 2.3 psi on those tires and the rubber roller, and less than a half a ton per contact point. So, you know, each one of these blades that are touching the ground on this 33 machine, you're looking at about 55 blades that are each carrying about 360 to 400 pounds of force on that machine. So you're transferring that weight to the blades, and you're really, you know, gliding through the field, so to speak. The old adage of staying off the field till it's fit to work still holds true. You know, the best way to prevent compaction is, you know, not have it start to begin with. So as this machine's running through the field, it's very light on its toes. It won't introduce that smearing or compaction zone, but the one thing this machine won't do is that deep work, guys. If you have those plow pans or chisel pans that are still hard, you're not going to get down there to take care of it. So there still is another practice or something that would have to do to take care of that. But after that is fixed, you're not going to reintroduce that. Some of the why-bys, it's high speed and high capacity. As Eric talked about earlier, you know, that desire to stay out in front of the planter in the springtime or to get more work done in the fall before it frees up, this machine allows you to do that. It has a great subsoil finish as well as top profile. If you guys have seen one of these in action, it's really remarkable on how well it does between the texturing with that rubber roller and the way the profile is mixed and incorporated. It's a really what the customers are asking for. A lot of the VT complaints that we heard was it doesn't do enough work. Well, this one does, and it has that great finish, as well as you're trapping that residue or those dollars in nutrients that you have tied up in that crop and returning it back into organic matter. So the finish is superb. It's versatile. It can be used as a fall residue machine or even a spring seedbed prep. It's robust. It's built to withstand those high speeds, to take that abuse going through the field. And it's very simple to operate, almost a hitch pin type machine where you back it up, hook it up, and you're ready to go. A lot of the tillage operations are not done by the primary person on the farm. It's by secondary people, even some high school kids. Each individual disc arm has 11.5 inches of travel before they trip over center. So say, for example, if you have some stony conditions in your field or obstacles that are unknown at the point, you've got a lot of individual travel with these blades while you're not lifting the whole machine out of the ground like a conventional disc gang would. You have that ability, as well with the rubber roller. You know, if you're running over, say, for example, stones or whatnot, you can absorb that impact and you're right back in the ground again. These are low maintenance machines. They're built with low maintenance in mind. You don't have to grease 96 points before you take off. We've got maintenance free pins, bushings. The hubs and the bearings are built to last. Even the 20 and 26 machines are completely greaseless. So there's a lot of heavy duty componentry put into this, and it's built to last, and it's built to withstand these type of forces that are exerted in the field. And the last thing, it just flat out performs whether you're a little bit on the wetter side or the drier side. All different soil types, if you're in clay, sand, or silt, loam, it does what it's supposed to do. It does what it's designed to do in this tillage section. You know, all the way from, like I said earlier, from residue management all the way to seed bed prep in the spring. So I'm going to leave this up for a little bit, guys, but this is our lineup here. We've got a 20-foot machine, a 26-foot machine, a 33, and a 40. You can kind of see the acres per hour and the horsepower requirements. The horsepower requirements, I'm going to say, are a good starting point. It's going to depend on each individual's farm, what kind of soil you're dragging through, how deep you're planning on going. And I always, as I've been talking to customers, if you're on the edge of what your tractor can do, I would say step down to a smaller size and make it up in speed to get your acres per hour, because you really want some power on standby, because being able to go that 7.5, 8 mile an hour range is where the machine really is designed for. So don't try stretching your tractor too far, because you will not like the results. So our offerings from the 201 through the 401, we're standard on the Autoco rubber roller with our Max Life scrapers, so very high wear item that lasts quite a long time. We've got 3 different blade options if you want to do a 20-inch smooth, both front and back. We have a 20-inch combination with a double V in the front, so a little more high power cutting action and keeping the smooths on the rear, so you have a little better finish. I see that happening a lot throughout the Corn Belt, guys wanting to do residue management. Or we have a full double V, both front and back. The gauge wheel option on the 201, it's for guys that are going to be doing deeper, like fall type tillage that's going to be coming in and out of soft ground to hard ground. You want that to be able to control your depth and to control that finish.